Nationwide protests come to the mountains as Eastern Kentucky demonstrators rally against racism. This as the chief of Kentucky's largest police department is ousted after another deadly shooting. Why Louisville's mayor is calling it an institutional failure.
The heat and humidity returns this week. We'll also see a few scattered showers and storms by the end of the week. I'll have more on that right now at 6.
Dedicated to Eastern and Southern Kentucky, this is WYMT Mountain News at 6.
Good evening again. I'm Steve Hensley as we continue this special hour-long newscast. As anger over the divide between police and the African American community boils over into violence across many parts of the country, people here in the mountains are also making their voices heard. Several peaceful protests are ongoing across southeastern Kentucky. We have full team coverage as these Right now, we will hear from Emily Bennett in Pikeville shortly, but we'll start tonight in Paintsville with WYMT's Will Puckett. And Will, what does it look like out there right now?
Steve, good evening. We wrapped up what was about a 25-minute walk around the block. It was a group of about stronger than 50 people who took part in this march. The young man who put it together, his name is Andre Fari, and I asked him why he felt it was so important to put it together here in Eastern Kentucky. And he says the most important thing was to march for racial injustice. When I asked him if he planned to keep this civilized, he said, of course, the majority of all protests in America have actually been civilized. It's just the ones that get unruly, he said, that seem to be the ones getting coverage. I'm going to step out a little bit. This is what is left of the group of people. You can see a couple of signs. One says, "Where is the love?" Hashtag Black Lives Matter. The other one says, "Silence equals violence. Black Lives Matter." That's just a handful of the signs that were out here as they marched around the block. Steve, this was civilized. They marched again for about 25 minutes, and then it all ended like it started, with a prayer. Emily Bennett is about 30 minutes up the road from me in Pikeville. We send it out to her now for a protest set to begin there.
Thank you, Will. Yes, here at Pikeville City Park, they're not calling this a protest. They're calling it a rally of public grief, empowerment, and anti-racial transformation. Now, the gathering has just started, and people will share stories, learning about racism, as well as pray and grieve the deaths of George Floyd and Breonna Taylor, along with many others. The event organizers are asking people to follow social distancing, spread out throughout the park, and bring signs in their support. Police here in Pikeville will be joining the event, wanting to stand together with the people. Organizer William Wheeler says he hopes this ignites the fire in people to want to see change in this country.
You know, just white people in general should speak up against racism, because it's going to happen, and if you know someone that's doing it, speak out behind closed doors, because we can't do it ourselves.
We want to be down there for the people, and they got a right to say what they want to say, and that's the way what America's based on. So we just want to do it peacefully and have a great gathering down there with them and let them get their part done, and we'll go right on with everyday functions.
Now, about 100 people have gathered in the park so far. They're opening with a prayer, and then they are going to have 9 minutes of silence for George Floyd. And they also do plan to walk the streets tonight as the event is closing. Live in Pikeville, Emily Bennett, WYMT Mountain News.
All right, Emily, and before that, Will Puckett, thank you both. We'll have more from both of those protests in Pikeville and Paintsville coming up tonight at 11. We're also told another protest is happening right now downtown in Corbin. It started at 6 o'clock at Sanders Park. The group organizing that demonstration demanded that protesters remain peaceful. And some people in Harlan County also plan to gather tomorrow afternoon at 4. That peaceful protest will take place on the bypass strip above Huddle House. Organizers say it is to raise small town awareness about the deaths of Breonna Taylor, George Floyd, and Ahmaud Arbery. Organizers say masks are mandatory. Louisville Mayor Greg Fisher announced the firing of the city's police chief this afternoon. That comes after the shooting that killed a popular owner of a barbecue restaurant early this morning. Family members said David McAtee was serving food when he was shot to death by Louisville Metro Police and the National Guard. Officers said they were trying to disperse a nearby crowd when someone shot at them, so they returned fire. Mayor Fisher says the officers involved in that shooting did not have their body cams on at the time, and that is against department policy. Mayor Fisher called it a, quote, institutional failure.
Officers do have orders not to fire pepper balls at media, but I'm sure you hopefully understand that sometimes when the media are involved inside the crowd or inside the area where there are protesters, and those protesters may be doing something unlawful or something they are not supposed to do, it's sometimes an unintended consequences when we fire the pepper balls into the crowd, that it may accidentally hit someone who's not the active protester or not unlawfully protesting.
That was obviously about the incident, I believe, over the weekend where a Wave 3 news reporter was hit by pepper balls. That had nothing to do with the shooting last night. Family members say the man that was shot last night died trying to protest his niece, who was also, or protect his niece rather, who was also struck by gunfire. Governor Beshear says he does not want this investigation to take months. The governor also said about an hour ago he'd hoped that the body cam video would have helped give more transparency to what happened this morning, and called the lack of that body cam footage, quote, unacceptable. Well, things were much more peaceful in Lexington last night. Community activists praised protesters for keeping the peace, even through strong emotions. Hip-hop artist and community activist Divine Karama was a part of the movement last night.
To be angry, mad, protest, be upset, but at the same token, we still got to be able to inform our young people and tell them, say, be mad, but be mad and go to the voting booth. You know what I mean? Be mad and get active in the community. Don't tear down your own neighborhood.
During a news conference today, Lexington Mayor Linda Gorton promised to form a group of people to suggest changes be made in the city. Well, because of the unrest in Louisville, we did not hear from Governor Beshear on specifically COVID-19 earlier today. He was originally supposed to talk at 4 o'clock. Instead, he had a news conference on the unrest at 5:30. He did send out a news release, though, about COVID-19. Kentucky has now topped 10,000 cases. That includes 131 new cases on Sunday and another 214 cases today. We also learned today that 8 more people have died from the virus. According to the numbers released this afternoon, more than 236,000 people in Kentucky have been tested and more than 3,200 have recovered. Well, we brought you updates from the Cumberland Gap National Historical Park as it entered its phased accessibility plan after temporarily closing back in March due to COVID-19 concerns. Today, more park favorites opened up. WYMT's Dakota Makris spoke with park officials and visitors and has more.
A beautiful spring day, coupled with a $1 trillion view at Cumberland Gap National Historical Park.
I'm in heaven right now. The view is spectacular. We can even see the Smokies in North Carolina today.
The Pinnacle Overlook reopened on Friday after being closed for 2 months.
Visitors are really happy that accessibility to the park is increasing. So yes, visitors can now come up to the Pinnacle Overlook.
For Michigan natives like Bill Brennan, his wife, and their 4-legged friends,
Eisenhower and Hazel are wagging their tails.
It is their first time coming to the park.
We were driving up and it just kept going up and up and up, and now here we are in this opening and you can see forever. So yeah, this is pretty good.
Pinnacle Overlook was not the only park to reopen. Restrooms and picnic areas made the list, but picnic shelters are limited to 10 or fewer people until June 29th.
Picnic shelter reservations are in high demand during the summer months because of the family reunions. But again, folks are going to have to work with us, again, to keep to that 10 number.
Reminding park visitors to practice social distancing for the well-being of others.
Safety is so important, and we've stressed it before. Safety of visitors, the park neighbors, and then team members themselves.
Hoping this road and others will stay open for visitors to enjoy. In Bell County, Dakota Makris, WYMT Mountain News.
And we have this just in from the Associated Press. Police have fired tear gas and deployed flashbangs to disperse a peaceful protest near the White House ahead of a planned Rose Garden speech by President Trump. Still waiting on that speech to begin. Not sure exactly what the president will announce. I'm sure that will be covered coming up in just a little bit on the CBS Evening News. Again, we're airing the evening news tonight at 7 o'clock. Well, one type of business that is able to open today for the first time since the pandemic shut everything down is theaters. But Hillside Theater in Hazard will not be opening. Management with that theater says with certain restrictions still in place, it makes it difficult for them to reopen at this time. A Kentucky state representative was arraigned on domestic violence charges today. Robert Goforth was arrested back in April, but the COVID-19 pandemic delayed court hearings, of course, across the state. Goforth entered a not guilty plea this morning.
And we are going to continue to see sunshine heading into the next couple of days, but temperatures will be on the rise. I'll have those details coming up.
And one gym in Hazard finally reopens its doors after the pandemic closed gyms across the state. We'll take you there.